"I'm not ready for labels," she said after 4 years, and I removed every label that night including hers and put one on her sister 2 weeks later. The words hit me like a precision tool dropped from height in my Cincinnati aerospace facility, where I spend my days creating components that need to fit perfectly or people die, and where tolerance for ambiguity measures in thousandths of an inch rather than years of relationship limbo. After 4 years of what I thought was building something real with Melody, she announced over dinner at our usual Thursday night spot that she needed to be authentic about her feelings regarding restrictive societal constructs, delivering this carefully rehearsed news between bites of the grilled salmon I'd ordered specifically because she'd mentioned wanting to eat healthier this week and cut back on red meat. I work as a precision machinist specializing in aerospace components, measuring tolerances that would make most people's eyes cross. So when someone tells me they want to keep things deliberately undefined after we've been splitting rent on my downtown loft, planning summer vacations to her family's lake house, and discussing her potential career pivot to full-time lifestyle photography with studio space, I immediately recognize a fundamental misalignment in basic specifications. Melody worked as a social media content strategist for local businesses while moonlighting as a lifestyle photographer, constantly posting inspirational content about authentic living and meaningful human connections while somehow never posting anything that acknowledged our 4-year relationship existed beyond carefully cropped photos that could be interpreted as close platonic friendship or professional collaboration. She explained with the rehearsed confidence of someone who'd been workshopping this conversation in therapy sessions and girls' nights that we could continue our beautiful connection and deep emotional intimacy without the boyfriend-girlfriend labels that felt too restrictive for her personal growth journey and spiritual evolution toward her highest self. I listened carefully as she described how much she valued what we had built together, how meaningful our connection was to her personal development and creative inspiration, while simultaneously rejecting any framework that would make our relationship real, accountable, or publicly acknowledged, and I realized she wanted all the emotional security, financial benefits, and domestic comfort of a committed relationship with none of the actual commitment, responsibility, or social recognition that comes with it. The irony struck me immediately that someone who made her living creating branded content for local businesses, developing their market identity and helping them communicate their value propositions clearly to customers, was suddenly allergic to applying any brand or clear identity to her personal life that might suggest genuine investment in our shared future or her willingness to be publicly associated with me. When she finished her carefully crafted speech about evolved connections transcending traditional relationship models and how labels were just outdated social constructs that diminished the purity of authentic love between spiritually awakened individuals, I agreed with a calmness that seemed to surprise and possibly unnerve her, telling her she was absolutely right about avoiding restrictive societal expectations that might limit her personal growth or artistic expression. I even thanked her for her honesty and transparency about what she actually wanted from our connection, watching her face register confusion at my complete lack of resistance to her relationship status downgrade announcement. That night, while she slept peacefully beside me in my bed, apparently relieved that I'd taken her relationship redefinition so well and without the dramatic emotional confrontation she'd probably spent weeks preparing for, I began the most systematic and thorough removal process of my professional career. I started with every framed photograph of us from my apartment walls, taking them down with the methodical approach I use when decommissioning complex machinery, then moved through 4 years of accumulated couple artifacts like I was conducting a precision inventory of shared domestic infrastructure that needed immediate reorganization. I boxed her clothes with the same careful attention I used for delicate aerospace components, wrapped her extensive skincare products and bath toiletries like fragile instruments requiring specialized handling for safe transport, and carefully packed her personalized coffee mug that read Melody's morning magic in flowing script alongside every other item that suggested two people shared this living space as romantic partners rather than casual acquaintances who occasionally crossed paths. By sunrise, my downtown loft looked exactly like the pristine home of someone who'd never been in a relationship, every surface methodically cleared of evidence that anyone named Melody had ever existed in my personal life or domestic space, because according to her own clearly stated preferences and relationship philosophy, she never actually had been my girlfriend anyway. Within 48 hours, I shocked Melody by returning all her belongings in neatly labeled boxes and removing her access to everything that suggested we shared any kind of ongoing connection or mutual commitment beyond casual acquaintanceship. I delivered the boxes to her shared workspace downtown during her lunch break, each one marked with detailed contents and packed with the same organizational precision I brought to aerospace inventory management, watching her face cycle through disbelief, confusion, and the first hints of genuine panic as she realized I wasn't bluffing about taking her label-free philosophy seriously and implementing it with professional thoroughness. The Netflix password change hit her that evening when she tried to continue our show from her own apartment, followed immediately by the discovery that her gym guest privileges had been canceled and her key card deactivated at my building's fitness center where she'd been working out regularly for 3 years without ever contributing to the monthly membership fees. I'd spent my entire weekend systematically removing her from every shared account, subscription service, and access privilege we'd accumulated over 4 years of what I'd thought was partnership, treating the process like debugging complex software where every connection point needed clean separation and documentation to prevent future system conflicts. Her usual parking spot in my building's underground garage had been reassigned to another resident after I informed management that my long-term guest no longer required access, and I'd updated all my emergency contact information at work to remove her name and number from the forms where she'd been listed as my primary contact for over 2 years, replacing her with my brother who actually wanted to be involved in my life during emergencies. Our mutual friend Devin, a freelance sound engineer who'd witnessed years of Melody's commitment-phobic behavior and contradictory demands for relationship benefits without relationship accountability, watched the entire drama unfold with fascination but absolutely refused to get involved after seeing how my methodical approach was systematically exposing her fundamental hypocrisy and forcing her to confront the practical implications of her philosophical stance. Devin had always been privately skeptical of Melody's spiritual authenticity claims, particularly her irritating habit of using personal growth language to justify fundamentally selfish behavior patterns. And he told me privately over drinks that watching her panic over losing practical benefits while simultaneously claiming she didn't want the emotional connection anyway was like watching someone fail a test they'd written themselves. Melody started cycling through increasingly desperate manipulation tactics, beginning with hurt confusion about why I was being so extreme and rigid about something she'd thought we could handle like mature, evolved adults who understood nuance, progressing to righteous anger that I wasn't respecting her personal boundaries and authentic growth process, and finally escalating to showing up unannounced at my workplace claiming she'd left critically important documents in my apartment that she needed to retrieve immediately for her business and personal legal obligations. I responded to every complaint, accusation, and manipulation attempt by calmly repeating her own exact words about avoiding labels and restrictive constructs that limited personal freedom, maintaining perfect politeness and professional courtesy while treating her exactly like the casual acquaintance she'd explicitly claimed to want to be rather than the long-term committed partner she'd actually been for 4 years. When she accused me of being petty, vindictive, and emotionally immature for changing my emergency contacts and removing her access to practical resources, I reminded her with scientific precision that emergency contacts were typically reserved for immediate family members or committed romantic partners. And since we'd clearly established we weren't the latter category and obviously weren't the former, it made complete logical sense to update my information to accurately reflect our actual connection level as defined by her own stated preferences. The beautiful irony became increasingly apparent that every single practical complaint she raised about the inconvenience and disruption of losing access to shared resources was essentially a direct admission that she'd valued the material benefits and practical advantages of our relationship while simultaneously rejecting the emotional framework and public acknowledgement that traditionally justified those benefits, proving beyond doubt that her philosophical stance about transcending traditional relationship models was really just elaborate intellectual justification for wanting all the commitment perks without any of the commitment responsibilities or social recognition. When she demanded to know why I was being so systematically cold and methodically thorough about everything instead of having a normal human conversation about our situation, I explained with the same calm precision I used to describe complex manufacturing processes that I was simply implementing her preferred relationship model with the thoroughness and attention to detail she'd always claimed to appreciate about my work ethic and professional approach to problem solving. By the end of that week, Melody had completed a remarkable transformation from confident spiritual guru dispensing wisdom about evolved connections and authentic living to genuinely panicked former partner realizing that truly label-free relationships meant completely access-free relationships, and that having someone take your philosophical positions seriously and implement them with engineering precision could be far more devastating than having someone fight against them emotionally. During Melody's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain her undefined access to my life and resources while simultaneously claiming she didn't want traditional relationship structure, I encountered her younger sister Cassie at the coffee shop near the University of Cincinnati where she was completing her demanding veterinary residency program and working brutal 12-hour shifts between advanced classes and hands-on clinical rotations with critically ill animals. Cassie approached me while I was reading technical specifications for a new aerospace contract over my lunch break, apologizing for interrupting my work but saying she felt compelled to address the elephant in the room regarding her sister's recent erratic behavior and emotional volatility that was affecting their entire family dynamic. She'd been hearing about what she diplomatically called the label situation from their mother, who'd been fielding Melody's tearful 3-hour phone calls at all hours of the night while trying to understand how a 4-year relationship had suddenly evaporated overnight without any apparent warning signs, dramatic confrontations, or obvious relationship problems that would justify such an abrupt change. Our conversation immediately revealed Cassie's refreshing directness and genuine intellectual curiosity about commitment, relationships, and what it actually meant to build something meaningful and sustainable with another person rather than just existing in parallel while avoiding difficult conversations about shared futures and long-term goals. Unlike Melody's performative authenticity that seemed designed primarily for social media content and personal branding purposes, Cassie demonstrated actual substance through her unwavering dedication to animal medicine, her brutally honest assessment of her sister's emotional immaturity and commitment issues, and her willingness to acknowledge complicated family dynamics without making excuses for destructive behavior patterns or enabling manipulative tactics. She asked thoughtful, technical questions about my work in aerospace manufacturing, showing genuine interest in the precision engineering and attention to microscopic detail required for components that kept commercial aircraft safely in the sky with thousands of passengers. And I found myself explaining complex metallurgy and stress tolerance concepts to someone who actually listened carefully and asked intelligent follow-up questions that proved she understood the underlying scientific principles rather than just pretending to be interested for social reasons. When Melody discovered through our mutual friend network that I had helped Cassie transport specialized veterinary equipment to her new clinic location across town and we'd exchanged phone numbers for future logistics coordination and professional networking, she absolutely lost her mind and accused me of committing serious boundary violations and emotional betrayal despite having explicitly established that there were no defined boundaries between us to violate in the first place. The accusation was particularly rich and hypocritical coming from someone who'd spent weeks lecturing me about how traditional relationship boundaries were restrictive social constructs that limited authentic human connection and personal growth. But apparently those progressive philosophical principles only applied when they served her personal interests rather than challenging her control over situations. Cassie handled her sister's dramatic emotional reaction with the calm professionalism of someone who'd spent years dealing with stressed animals and their emotionally volatile owners during veterinary emergencies, simply pointing out that helping someone move heavy veterinary equipment was a practical favor between two responsible adults, not some elaborate romantic scheme to violate undefined relationship boundaries that Melody had specifically rejected as unnecessary limitations on personal freedom. I realized during those increasingly frequent conversations with Cassie that she possessed everything I'd thought I was getting with Melody but actually wasn't, including the ability to articulate what she wanted from life beyond vague spiritual concepts, the commitment to pursue difficult long-term goals like completing veterinary school despite financial and emotional challenges, and the basic respect to treat other people's time and effort with genuine appreciation rather than taking them For granted while philosophizing about transcending conventional social expectations and traditional relationship models. My friendship with Cassie developed naturally through our shared appreciation for precision work, the fascinating parallels between my mechanical expertise in aerospace manufacturing and her surgical skills in veterinary medicine, and our mutual respect for people who actually followed through on their commitments rather than just talking about personal growth while avoiding responsibility and accountability to others in their lives. Our first official date happened when Cassie invited me to observe a complex orthopedic surgery she was performing on a golden retriever who'd been hit by a car and suffered multiple fractures. Trusting my steady hands and attention to detail enough to ask me to assist with equipment positioning and instrument management during the delicate 3-hour procedure that would determine this animal's future quality of life and mobility. I watched her work with the same methodical precision I brought to manufacturing critical aerospace components, every movement calculated and purposeful as she repaired shattered bone fragments and torn ligaments with microscopic accuracy, maintaining perfect focus even when complications arose that required immediate adaptation of her surgical approach. And I understood immediately that I was watching someone who treated their professional responsibilities with the same life or death seriousness I brought to ensuring that commercial aircraft stayed safely in the sky with thousands of passengers depending on the structural integrity of my work. The chemistry between us built steadily as we discovered shared values around integrity, personal growth that didn't require abandoning existing responsibilities and commitments to other people in your life, and the courage to want real partnership rather than just convenient arrangements that provided emotional and practical benefits without accountability or public acknowledgement of the relationship's importance and meaning. Meanwhile, Melody had launched a comprehensive social media campaign about toxic masculinity and emotionally unavailable men who couldn't handle evolved women seeking authentic spiritual connection, posting carefully crafted inspirational quotes about recognizing your worth and refusing to settle for partners who weren't ready for genuinely evolved relationships based on mutual respect and spiritual growth, while simultaneously sending me increasingly desperate and contradictory text messages, asking if we could talk things through like mature adults who understood that all meaningful relationships required compromise and emotional flexibility from both parties involved. When Cassie mentioned during one of our evening walks through the revitalized downtown Cincinnati riverfront area that she'd never been afraid of labels or public commitment because she believed in being completely honest about what actually mattered to you rather than hiding behind philosophical abstractions or spiritual concepts that avoided real vulnerability and emotional risk, I realized I'd found someone who meant what she said and said what she meant without requiring complex interpretation or constant emotional management to understand her true intentions and feelings about our developing connection. The contrast between dating someone who wanted to build something real and sustainable together and dealing with someone who demanded all the relationship benefits while rejecting the relationship framework was so stark it felt like comparing precision engineering to abstract art, one requiring measurable standards and clear specifications while the other remained deliberately undefined and open to constant reinterpretation based on shifting emotional needs and convenience. Cassie approached our developing relationship with the same straightforward professionalism she brought to veterinary medicine, discussing her expectations and boundaries clearly, acknowledging potential challenges and obstacles honestly, and treating our time together as genuinely valuable rather than something to be taken for granted while she explored other options or worked through personal issues that prevented real commitment to building a shared future with someone who actually wanted the same things. I found myself looking forward to spending time with someone who asked thoughtful technical questions about my work because she was genuinely interested in understanding what I did rather than just being socially polite, who contributed equally to planning our activities instead of expecting me to handle all the logistics while she showed up and provided running commentary about how things could be better, and who treated our connection as something worth investing effort and intentional development from both parties rather than something that should magically sustain itself without conscious attention or mutual dedication to growth and improvement. The situation reached its explosive climax when Melody discovered my relationship with Cassie during the annual Chen family barbecue at their comfortable suburban home. arriving unexpectedly with a defensive attitude and obvious territorial instincts while we were already there as an established couple, helping her father Robert with the elaborate grilling setup and her mother Linda with food preparation and table settings for their extended family gathering that included aunts, uncles, and family friends. Melody's parents greeted me warmly with genuine happiness and obvious surprise, expressing how wonderful it was to see me again after months of complete absence and how absolutely delighted they were that I'd found someone as special and accomplished as Cassie, inadvertently revealing through their casual conversation and enthusiastic welcomes that they had never actually considered Melody's 4-year unlabeled situation with me to be a real relationship worthy of family integration, serious recognition, or emotional investment from them as potential in-laws who might someday welcome me permanently into their family circle. The family dynamic became crystal clear as I watched everyone immediately rally around Cassie's happiness and impressive professional accomplishments, celebrating her recent completion of a demanding surgical rotation at the University Veterinary Hospital and asking detailed questions about her future career plans, while simultaneously treating Melody's dramatic entrance and subsequent emotional outburst as typical attention-seeking behavior they'd learned to manage rather than enable over years of similar performance episodes that had disrupted previous family events and celebrations. Melody accused Cassie of deliberately stealing her boyfriend and betraying fundamental sisterly loyalty and family bonds that should have prevented this kind of romantic poaching within their immediate family. But Cassie responded with the calm precision of a surgeon addressing a medical emergency that Melody had specifically rejected the boyfriend label months ago and couldn't retroactively claim ownership of something she'd explicitly refused to acknowledge or commit to for 4 years of deliberate ambiguity and emotional distance from any serious relationship framework. The confrontation escalated dramatically when Melody demanded that their parents choose sides between their daughters and support her righteous anger over this family betrayal that violated basic sister codes and loyalty expectations, only to have Linda and Robert gently but firmly explain that I was never actually considered part of their family circle because Melody had consistently kept me at arm's length and refused to integrate our relationship into family events, holiday celebrations, or future planning discussions that involved serious partners who were being evaluated as potential permanent family members. Robert mentioned with obvious confusion and some sadness that they'd always wondered why Melody seemed ashamed or embarrassed to include me in family photos or holiday celebrations over the years, treating me more like a temporary guest or casual friend than a serious romantic partner worthy of family investment and long-term relationship development. While Linda pointed out with motherly directness that Cassie had introduced me to extended family members, included me in conversation about her future veterinary practice plans, and treated me like someone who genuinely belonged in their family circle within just weeks of us starting to date seriously and building something real together. I watched Melody's confident facade completely crumble as she realized that her commitment-phobic approach to our relationship had not only cost her the relationship itself, but had also prevented her family from ever taking it seriously enough to invest emotionally in its success or consider me a potential long-term family member, leaving her with absolutely no foundation to claim betrayal or demand loyalty from people who had never seen her as genuinely committed to me in the first place. When Melody tried desperately to argue that labels didn't matter and that her family should respect her authentic spiritual connection regardless of social constructs or traditional relationship frameworks that limited evolved connections, Cassie quietly observed with devastating logical precision that if labels truly didn't matter to Melody as she'd always claimed during her philosophical lectures, then she shouldn't be upset about losing something that she had repeatedly insisted had no real definition, importance, or meaning anyway. 8 months later, Cassie and I announced our engagement with a beautiful photo session at the Cincinnati Zoo where we volunteered together on weekends, working alongside the veterinary team to care for injured wildlife that had been brought in for rehabilitation and medical treatment after accidents or encounters with urban development projects that displaced natural habitats throughout the greater Cincinnati metropolitan area. Melody's reaction to our engagement announcement reached absolutely epic proportions when she received our wedding invitation addressed to Melody Chen and guest, The exact same generic treatment she had consistently given me for years during family events where she refused to acknowledge our relationship publicly or include me as her specific partner rather than just another random attendee who might or might not show up depending on her convenience and social calendar priorities. She called me directly within hours of receiving the elegant invitation with its professional photography and careful attention to detail, sobbing uncontrollably about how impossibly fast everything had moved between Cassie and me, accusing me of using her sister to get calculated revenge against her for ending our undefined connection and spiritual partnership, but I gently reminded her with perfect calm that she had personally taught me through extensive philosophical lectures that labels didn't matter and that I was simply living authentically without restrictive social constructs. Exactly as she had recommended during her numerous speeches about evolved spiritual connections transcending traditional relationship frameworks. The beautiful irony reached its absolute peak when Melody posted a lengthy Instagram essay about betrayal trauma and family loyalty violations that destroyed the sacred bonds between sisters, only to have multiple college friends and former coworkers immediately comment with screenshots of her previous posts celebrating her label-free lifestyle and openly mocking people who needed relationship validation through traditional commitment frameworks and public acknowledgement ceremonies, exposing her complete hypocrisy to her entire social media network and professional circle within hours of her emotional breakdown going viral across multiple platforms. Devin privately texted me to congratulate me on finding someone who actually wanted to build a genuine life together instead of performing independence while demanding all the relationship benefits without any of the accountability, adding with obvious amusement that watching Melody's complete public meltdown over losing something she had repeatedly claimed didn't exist was providing better entertainment than any reality show currently available on television or streaming platforms. I forwarded Devin's perfectly crafted message to Cassie, who laughed out loud and pointed out with surgical precision that Melody was essentially having a very public nervous breakdown over the loss of a relationship she had spent 4 years insisting wasn't actually a relationship, proving definitively that her entire philosophical stance about transcending traditional labels had been nothing more than elaborate intellectual justification for wanting all the commitment benefits without any of the commitment responsibilities or public accountability. The wedding planning process became a joyful celebration of everything Melody had claimed to reject philosophically, including public commitment ceremonies, complete family integration, and the proud acceptance of relationship labels that clearly defined our intentions and mutual dedication to building something permanent and sustainable together rather than maintaining deliberate ambiguity that served no one's interests except someone avoiding responsibility. Cassie approached wedding planning with the same methodical precision and attention to detail she brought to complex veterinary surgeries, creating detailed timelines and comprehensive backup plans while maintaining clear focus on what actually mattered, which was celebrating our mutual decision to commit to each other publicly in front of all the people who genuinely supported our relationship and wanted to see us succeed as life partners. When Melody attempted to reach out through mutual friends to request a private conversation about our upcoming wedding, suggesting that we could find a mature and spiritually evolved way to handle the complicated family dynamics without excluding her completely from this important milestone, I politely declined through Devin and calmly reminded her that mature adults consistently respected other people's clearly stated boundaries and didn't demand access to relationships and events they had previously rejected as meaningless social constructs designed to limit authentic human connection and personal spiritual growth. The wedding became a perfect celebration of everything Melody had spent years claiming to reject philosophically, showcasing public commitment ceremonies, traditional family integration, and the proud acceptance of relationship labels that clearly defined intentions and mutual dedication to building something permanent together rather than maintaining deliberate ambiguity for personal convenience. Cassie and I exchanged heartfelt vows in front of 200 guests including veterinary colleagues who respected her professional accomplishments, aerospace industry friends who understood the precision required for both our careers, and family members who had watched our genuine partnership flourish over the past year with enthusiasm and unwavering support rather than skepticism and constant emotional manipulation tactics designed to avoid real commitment. Melody attempted to disrupt the reception with an unexpected appearance and a rambling speech about authentic love not needing ceremonial validation or social recognition, claiming that real spiritual connections transcended traditional marriage frameworks and social expectations while completely ignoring the irony that she was disrupting a ceremony celebrating exactly the kind of authentic love she claimed to value. But Cassie's veterinary school friends, who had heard the complete backstory of Melody's commitment-phobic behavior and philosophical hypocrisy, quickly and professionally escorted her out while maintaining the dignified composure they'd learned from handling difficult situations in high-stress medical environments. The most satisfying twist came when Melody's +1, a cryptocurrency trader she had met on a dating app just 3 days earlier and brought specifically to make some kind of statement about her ability to attract new partners, abandoned her in the venue parking lot after she spent the entire cocktail hour complaining about her ex-boyfriend and his new wife instead of engaging in normal social conversation or showing any interest in getting to know the person she had invited as her date, leaving her completely stranded outside the reception hall while guests inside celebrated genuine love and commitment with joy and enthusiasm. My approach to this entire situation had never been about cruelty or elaborate revenge schemes designed to hurt Melody emotionally, but rather about honoring her stated values so completely and systematically that she couldn't maintain her contradictory demands for relationship commitment without relationship accountability, forcing her to confront the practical implications of her philosophical positions when implemented with the same engineering precision I brought to my aerospace manufacturing work. As I danced with Cassie surrounded by people who celebrated rather than feared our happiness and commitment to building a life together, I could see Melody sitting alone in her car outside the venue through the large windows, finally understanding that avoiding labels had meant avoiding real love, while Cassie and I had built something authentic and lasting by embracing exactly what Melody had spent 4 years systematically rejecting out of fear and emotional immaturity. The irony was absolutely perfect that someone who had lectured extensively about transcending social constructs and evolving beyond traditional relationship models was having a complete emotional breakdown outside a wedding ceremony that represented everything she claimed didn't matter or have real meaning, proving that her entire philosophical stance had been elaborate intellectual justification for avoiding the vulnerability and genuine commitment that authentic partnership required from both people involved. Devon later told me that watching Melody's complete isolation at an event celebrating the love she had thrown away through her own choices was like witnessing someone finally receive the natural consequences of their own behavior patterns, and that my systematic approach had been more devastating than any emotional confrontation because it had given her exactly what she asked for without any of the drama or attention she craved through conflict and manipulation. Our wedding night was everything that authentic commitment should be, surrounded by people who supported our decision to build a real life together rather than performing independence while demanding relationship benefits. And I realized that Melody had actually done me an enormous favor by revealing her true priorities and emotional limitations before I wasted any more time trying to build something meaningful with someone who was fundamentally incapable of reciprocating genuine partnership and emotional investment in our shared future together.